And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, scholars. I see the professors here. I see our members, our regulars, and good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us once more, as we always meet on a Wednesdays. Our date, I always say that our date on Wednesdays is in this platform. A special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. Thank you so much for joining this session. We meet here to sharpen each other as leaders, to correct each other, to encourage each other, to inspire each other, to learn from each other, because it's peers talking to other peers. So thank you so much for joining us, and I would like to encourage you to participate. We would like to learn a lot from you, because we know that you can teach us so much. Thank you so much. I will introduce the speaker shortly. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We called ourselves, or in abbreviation, WILD. So we are wild in whatever we are doing. How wonderful it is to meet again in this cold weather, but also in the beginning of the Women's Month. So in South Africa, August is a special month because it's a month dedicated to our women, our mothers, our wives, our sisters, our daughters, people who are very, very important to us. So those who are joining us outside of South Africa, you'll understand now that why August is a very particular and a very special month to us. I'm not going to waste any time, as I will be introducing our special guest tonight, and we're very happy that really we are discussing this very important topic tonight: property sector in the SA context. Already you can hear Prof. Twala there is engaging the speaker already, even before we start. And I know that he's from the building, construction and building environment. He's a professor there at UNISA. So as I'm saying that, we can see that how important the topic will be discussing tonight. And I would like to really encourage all of you to participate, as you always do, because we really learn from each other. We are addressed tonight by my sister, Portia Tau-Sekati. I know this sister of mine years ago. I was still working for Busa at a time, and we used to interact a lot as the charters had just started, and she was really putting together the charter and working there, and she has been doing a great work and a great job there within the property sector. So I'm so glad that Usiswa Mrs. Portia is with us tonight. Very, very brief about Portia is that she is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Property Sector Charter Council. She has an extensive knowledge, and also she's a specialist in transformation, as she has been driven by the South African, or rather the transformation that has been driven by the South African legislation framework, that is BBBE. As I'm saying that, when I was at Busa, I was really very involved in putting together those legislations, whether BBBE, working with NETLAC, and so She reminds me of those good old days. Obviously, coming from BMF as well, with, as my brother was saying, Professor Twala, that we are coming long ago because we're all together at BMF. There's Andre Young from BMF and other colleagues there. So transformation has been within our blood. When someone talks about transformation in South Africa, you know, I see my brother, the same Tsima from Sasol. He was driving transformation there at Sasol. And, you know, so it's a wonderful topic tonight. So we're all going to engage lovely. And Sis Portia has extensive knowledge and experience in dealing and lobbying government, driving stakeholder management, influencing collaboration, and ultimately that foster good partnership. She had written South African legislation on women empowerment framework, and have written and supported many various departments, organizations, program on developing and or implementing their policies on sustainable, inclusive economic strategy. So you speak about transformation, you speak about Sis Portia. And as I'm saying that, I really don't want to read this long profile here, because many of you, you know her, and we are just so eager and waiting to hear from here. From here. So over to you, my sister. Thank you so much for availing yourself in the midst of your busy schedule. I know that you are very, very busy, but thank you for your humility, for respecting me and us in this platform, just to come and learn from you. This is a platform, scholars, great leaders, you find all sorts of professionals here, but we are so humble enough that we come every Wednesday to learn from each other. So we want to give it to you now to address us. Over to you, Sis Portia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just indicate if you can hear me there.
Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely perfect. And thank you so much, my dearest brother, or Prof. Majola. Yes, indeed, we come very far, and it's been an absolute honor to be in the space. And thank you to everybody and the opportunity to be here. I know from the introduction, we spoke a lot about legislation, about the transformation. Yes, I'll touch on it, but I think my key topic that I chose to talk today about is probably something that is very important to all of us, and particularly in this changing environment, which is really understanding the South African property sector. So today I'm going to be talking to you about understanding the property sector, our understanding of the property sector, where we are as a sector as a whole, how big it is, who actually works into it, who works in it, what does it contribute to our GDP? What does it contribute in terms of our employment? How much we actually give to our fiscus, and how is actually get split into various subsegments? So we're really going to be talking and engaging on the various parts of it. It doesn't exclude us from actually topic on touching on the others, but I think the major part of it is really about understanding the sector and where we're going, particularly in this critical time where we've actually been facing the challenges particularly of load shedding. So it's a space that's very fluid, I must say. 1 minute, everybody else has gone home and they're working from home and the sector is now running dry, nobody needs offices. The next minute there's load shedding and offices can't cope with actually, or rather employers can set up individuals at home. So now they all have to return back at the offices, because if stage 6 and stage 7 and stage 8 are going to be the norm of the day, it certainly means the productivity in our organizations and our companies would actually be very low, and delivery and the impact of that to the economy obviously will indeed suffer and be able to face a negative consequence. So it's been a very fluid environment. Every time we just seem to think we know where we're going, something else comes up. You would all know, as recent as 2 days ago, Tembisa and its and it's civil riots that has once again hit us, where they've once again, they've also burned some of the properties that they have. And this really also comes at the back of the civil unrest that we had last year in July that really hit a major part of KZN and Gauteng as well, but to a limited extent. And all of those things become an issue. And now, as we see all of this, the question is, where are we? Where do we stand? And we really don't have, may I say, the current environment. It keeps on shifting, just as I said, as just when you think you've kind of getting to understand it, there's a shift in terms of where we understand it. So to our honorable guests today, I'm really going to talk to you in details about the property sector, and I'm hoping to really share with you my humble understanding of the sector itself and why we went into the sector. Yes, as a charter council, why even do a research that actually aims to understand the property sector, and what qualifies us to actually do so? And that's where I'll be coming from. So that's where I will actually, a major part of my focus will be on in terms of our discussion today. So can I then take over in terms of just sharing our spreadsheet, or rather my presentation? Super, I see a thumbs up from that side. So I'm gonna just be able to do a slideshow. Are you able to see it nice, big, and big from your side? Is it on slideshow?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let me, yeah, it's yeah.
Should I try once more?
Try once more.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Let me. Okay, I'm just trying to. Okay, so I'm gonna try and see if I can do
yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
Is it on slideshow?
No,
or should I?
If you can, yeah, if you can just put it on slideshow there, so. Yeah.
Is that good? Fantastic. Yeah. Well done. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for really indulging me to this evening today. So I'm really going to talk to you about the property sector itself today, and really be able to share with you what the property sector is all about. But before I even get into the details about this property sector, let me tell you who we are, so that really, and be able to give you the understanding, or at least qualify why we stand here and we are able to talk about the property sector itself. I'm from the Property Sector Charter Council. I'm the CEO running the Sector Charter Council, one of the sector charter councils that are there. And our role is, we are one of the 12 sector charter councils that are there. As you could see, I mean, sorry, the slides are jumping around. So you've got construction, financial sector charter council, ICT, transport, forestry, agri. MEC stands for marketing, advertising, and communication. You've got tourism, you've got chartered accountants, you've got defense and petroleum. Those are the 11, including the property sector charter council. There's 2 in the pipeline, and that is the transport sector charter council, and there's also production and events. So those are the sector charter councils that are currently there, that are in the pipeline. And so it's an honor for me today, this evening, to talk to you. I have the honor of at least convening all the sector charter council as well, and supporting them, and also in being able to drive the sector councils. So really, from our side, from the sector charter council, who are some of our members? So literally, in summary, in a nutshell, if I may say, It's literally anybody that's literally in the property sector will then be part of the Property Sector Charter Council, all the way from Public Works, which is actually mandated to drive the property of the of our country. So they drive also the immovable property. You've got SAPOA, which is South African Property Owners Associations. You've got SAFMA, which is Facility Management Association, Rebosa, which is Real Estate Business Owners South Africa. These are the big giant estate agencies, the PEM Golding, Chase Everett, Remax, and so you go on. We've got PIC as our strategic partner. They own a lot of properties, as you know. They drive a lot of our pension funds, but of course you would know that pension funds have got a long-term view, and they're really interested in actually investing in a long-term view like property, so they are a strategic partner. And on the right-hand side there, you've got SA REITs, which is South African Real Estate Investment Trust. These are our listed sectors that we currently have. They're listed sectors in the property sector. So under the REITs, there's about 28 of them. They are worth almost close to about 250 billion, but under the listed sector, there's almost close to about 70. So as the REITs, the advantage that you have as a REIT is actually then they are given the tax concession by SARS. All it means is that your dividends are taxed at the hands of the investor itself. You've got 28 of them all the way starting in the biggest SA REITs is Growth Point, Redefine, all of those are tech, and they will all fall under all the REITs in particular. We've got, following that, we've got SACPVP, which is actually a regulator for the valuers. And really, valuers could belong anyway, because you value stock, you value property, you value machinery, but valuers in particularly chose to be part of the property sector, mainly because a lot of the money that they make actually comes when they value where there is top structure. We've got South African Shopping Center Council, which is really pulls together all the shopping centers that we currently have in South Africa. I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the shopping center, the size of shopping centers that we have. I mean, we can literally tell you up to the last square meter of shopping centers that we currently have in South Africa and where they are. Are they neighboring? Are they national? Are they national shopping center? And then we can literally tell you all of that. We've got WPN, which is Women Property Network. Of course, one of our women organization that drives women participation in the property sector. Services CETA that drives a lot of a lot of our members would belong into, of which of the many chambers amongst those that they have would be the property chamber is the second biggest one in the Services CETA. And then you've got IREM Institute of Real Estate Management is an international skill development that drives international professional status of management of real estate. Green Building Council, a very topical subject that should be at the tip of our tongue as we talk today, particularly mainly because obviously of the green environment that that should actually become one of our key goals as we drive into the NDP and also in the sustainable program as well. We then got one of our proud members called YIPA, Youth in the Property Associations. So they are also our proud member, and this is made up of really the youth that are in the property sector, and majority of these youth are youth that are studying property and construction as a career of option. So a lot of them are not just the youth that kind of today they belong to catering, the next day they are with production, the next day they do ICT. Most of these guys, at least 90%, even more, out as close as 98% have studied property and construction as a career of option. So they are part of the YIPA group. You've got managing agents, the Managing National Association of the Managing Agents, we call it NAMA. This is literally at the residential association that manages residential in bulk. So a lot of these cluster houses, a lot of us call it body corporates where you've got big clusters, a lot of those that we've seen, the likes of where you have developments that Baldwin has really also flourished in that space as well. You've got Subtaco, of course, our member that we know very well, Black Technical Association, so they participate in the industry as well. We've got Managing Housing Finance Corporation, NHFC. So NHFC is really, they finance, they invest, they support into the space of housing, and it will soon become South African Development Bank of Government Development Bank. So they've already pulled together organizations such as Nurture, NHFC, they'll be pulling them together. So not in the long distant future, you'll be hearing NHFC really converting into becoming South African Government Housing South African Housing Government Association. And AISA is an institution of estate agencies of South Africa. So these are the real estate agents that belong to South Africa. Majority of those that are small, there's about 15,000 of those that are registered with the previously called EAAB, now called the PPRA. They would belong to AISA. You've got BPVA, Black Property Valuers Association. You've got also Department of Public Enterprise, but public enterprise is actually made up of state-owned enterprises, majority of which actually have got a lot of property. And when I talk property, it's the likes of Transnet, PRASA, EXA, all of those. There's about 19 of those. We'll talk about it in details in terms of the property that they own. And when I talk even EXA, I'm not talking necessarily the runway where actually the planes land. I'm talking the property that EXA would literally be owning. So that would be what that department, the role of that department in our space. You've got SIBIP, South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners as well. A very organization that has been there as well, participating in the transformation space as well in the charter for a while. NPF, National Property Forum, majority of which are made up of Black estate agents. SHRA, which is a regulatory association or authority as well for social housing. So they drive the social housing where we actually, they deliver social housing. They support the development of social housing. For those of you who obviously would be interested, you would then register with SHRA. They give you an amount of about 271,000 per about 33 square meter that you develop in order to drive the housing needs of our country. PPRA, another regulator that we have in the space, and this was previously known as state agency, state agencies, EAB, Board Association, now is a Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority as of the 1st of February this year, after it was promulgated by the President this year. So they regulate the space of property practitioners, and that has literally grown from the definition of estate agencies, only supporting estate agencies, to rather 12 sectors that they now regulate, including the developers, including people in the tourism department, including business brokers, and so on. So they've actually managed to develop that space. You then have another regulator, we call it the CSOS, Community Scheme Ombudsman Services. It's actually a very new regulator. It's not so old. It started in 2007, but starting to gain momentum in the 2008, as and when you actually start to actually have cluster houses, and you start to write legislations of, or rather rules of how people should actually live together. You actually need to take those rules to CSOS for them to actually be able to approve of the rules. And this came about when majority of the people found themselves living together in cluster houses, but having a lot of disagreements in terms of what can be done and what cannot be done. Some people say, oh no, you can't really come and slaughter chicken in our townhouses, whilst others believe that it's culturally for them, it's actually permissible. So this is where CSOS then comes in. It really develops the rules of how actually people can live together as a community and how they engage. But they also, as you probably would obviously can be aware that when you live together, you also do encounter some conflicts, as much as, and I hope there's less of those than there are of those that actually find where you find yourself living in harmony together. There's the ombudsman that will resolve the challenges that one would then have when they live together in a community of such. So those are all our members. So we continue to grow. So literally anybody that's in our association, and there obviously there are constituencies that we currently have, will then be the constituencies that we currently have in our midst. So as a property sector charter council, what do we do? Our main reason for existence is really we enhance transformation by really being able to find unique knowledge and characteristics which we fuse into the legislation, as you humbly explain, Prof. Majola, on the property sector, to really give and deepen the meaning of inclusive participation in the mainstream, particularly in the mainstream economy, allowing people to find an opportunity to participate in the mainstream rather than in the periphery. So allowing the majority of our economy, as you would know, I don't know if obviously a lot of you, if may have engaged with the latest statistics, we would know even post-COVID that the country is about 60 million. I mean, from the 59.4 that we currently have, I think we actually had between 2000 and 2020 and end of 21, there was about 1.7 million births. However, we also lost about 800,000, just under 800,000. That actually now simply being able to bring us to about 60.1 million in terms of the population. So, and when we talk about the population, even when we talk about the split in terms of from the racial perspective, you would know that literally 92% of that split is actually defined as Black, and that Black being actually African, colored, and Indians, of which 79%, which is a big 79%, would be African, 2.9% would then be Indian, and then the balance will then be the colored people that makes up the balance of the 92%, of which 8% are then the whites. So when we talk about creating an inclusive environment for everybody to have a meaningful participation, it really means actually our country, and this is where it actually answers who actually is the custodian of BEE and why is the Department of Trade and Industry. The question that you ask yourself is, what does the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition do? They really, their role or mandate is exactly what the name said, is to actually drive trade and investment in order to grow our economy. Now, to grow our economy, one of the questions that they ask themselves is basically, how would we grow the economy? What strategies do we need to put in place to enable our country to grow? And amongst, there are many of those, there's actually only 5 of those. One of those 5 is inclusive growth. What does that mean? It literally means, in a nutshell, there's absolutely no chance that our country will be able to grow at its optimal growth unless everybody has got an equal opportunity to participate in it. So that's what they do. So inclusive growth is one of the strategies that they then thrive to actually drive in order to actually grow our economy. So they do that. And so BEE is one of those tools. There are many other tools as well that they actually fuse into the process. Amongst others, they would have things such as where you bring rural and urban economy to then participate, where you bring women, where you bring disabled into to participate. But the point and the nutshell of the issue is that our country will never be able to realize its optimum growth unless everybody has got an equal opportunity to participate. In particularly, if you're talking exclusion of 92% of the population of the country, there is absolutely no chance that we'd actually be able to realize that. So in a nutshell, that's really what we do. And we do that by actually drive that through the legislation that we gazette, and the current prevailing legislation that we currently have, we gazetted in June 2017 is the Gazette 40910. That's a prevailing legislation that picked up from another legislation that we had in June. So, and when we write this legislation, one of the key critical elements that we need to actually infuse into this legislation, actually, it's actually an obligation that says you've got to be absolutely clear about who is actually included into the legislation. From our side, the commercial, residential, and zoned land, those being the big clusters that we currently have. And I'll dwell a lot more when I talk about the research, which is the main topic of what we really want to talk about today. So under the commercial really is, it's really the office space, we've got industrial, we've got retail and leisure. Those are the subsegments that we have under commercial. Under residential, you've got houses, and we've got community schemes, which really includes cluster houses, flats and townhouses. And then in particular, you also have zoned land, and it has to be specifically zoned, because if it's not zoned, it belongs to agri or forestry and does not necessarily belong to our space. Now, talking about all of that, I think I said a little bit on the transformation side. Now, getting closer to the topic of really what we want to talk about, or what I really wanted to share in creating an understanding about our sector, is really the research in terms of the property sector. The question is, why would a charter council really engage and really go so deep in terms of doing research and to this detail? One, we're fortunate, to answer that question, we're fortunate enough that we've got at least everybody that we can pull everybody together, from residential to commercial to everybody else. We are able to pull this number into a collective number that enables us to see the sector as a whole, rather than only its components parts, but really we are able to do that. That's the first part. But the second and most important part, really what we do is we wanted to create a hub of knowledge about understanding our sector. So, and when you talk about a hub of knowledge and creating a consistent understanding about our sector for all its participants, is that it shouldn't matter where you are and who's talking and what day it is and where the sun is shining. We must have a clear understanding of who the sector is, how big the sector is, what are the components of the sector and what it's made up of. And creating a clear and consistent understanding was actually, for us, was very key in relation to actually being able to pull all of these numbers together, because we also wanted to be able to also clearly articulate that when we talk about transformation and we talk about 10% transform, 10% of what? 10% of 2, 10% of 2,000, 10,000, what number? What number is it? 10% of what, you know? So we really then thought it is absolutely critical for all of us to then be able to pull all of these numbers together. So, and we have an honor of actually, of really being able to have a research committee that's really driven. We've got academics that sit on our research committee, a number of academics that sit, and particularly a lot of those academics that specialize in the built environment that sits in our committee. But we also have, particularly in our listed sector, we've got research divisions. So the heads of those research divisions and units of the listed sector, which are very big in research, also form part of them, of our research committee. Now they drive and guide literally where we are and how literally this research can actually talk to us. So today really I'll be talking to you about some of the research that we've done, and as I said, I did mention earlier on, it has been very fluid, and I say very fluid. And prior to COVID, we were about to do a research, we were about to actually review our numbers that we have, and when COVID hit, we said, oh, maybe thank God we didn't do it, because really the point would have meant that we need to redo those things because the way COVID has had that number. So the numbers that I'll be sharing with you today are the numbers prior to COVID, because we know those are solid. We are in the process of actually being able to look at what has been the impact of COVID into the property sector in particularly, and that's an ongoing research that we're doing, and we're hoping towards the end of the year or closer towards the beginning of the year we'll be done with that industry. Now, the property sector is made up of 4 subsegments, and those 4 subsegments I mentioned is commercial, residential, then there's public space, and then there's also zoned land. I mentioned also that. Now, talking about the commercial industry, what is the commercial industry? So out of that 4 subsegments, one of them is commercial industry, and I mentioned earlier earlier on, that is made up of retail, office space, industrial, and leisure. Leisure is literally hospitality. It's actually hotels, but the property side of hotels, not the management side of hotel. The management side of hotel belongs to tourism, but the property side of the hotels belongs to the property sector. So that's the property side. And then the owners obviously would then be corporate and investment. But in total, all of those subsegments, and I'll dwell in a little bit in the details about how big is each of those subsegments. But in total, the commercial is worth 1.3 trillion. So the 1.3 trillion, it's obviously the spaces that we currently have, that we've had in our property sector, and has actually grown with particular, with the growth, the biggest part of that 1.3 trillion has been retail. Retail at 534 billion rand. So, and retail is actually, and strangely enough, and I say strangely because sometimes it's very difficult to really comprehend where we come up with that numbers. I mean, South Africa is actually the 6th biggest in the world with the number of malls. I mean, this is after US, UK, Canada, Japan, China, and then you've got South Africa. The point is per capita in terms of per population. I mean, we don't have a huge population. We're only 60.1 million, as I mentioned. So, but we have a huge number of malls. So at 534 billion rand is actually the worth of our property sector. And we can literally, as I said to you, we are able to tell you up to the last square meter of where the properties are. Are they neighborhood? Are they local convenient community centers and so on? We are clearly be able to actually articulate. And of course, 62% of those are the formal retail industries, retail shopping sector centers that we have, of which 44.5% are in Gauteng, and 15% is in the Western Cape, and another 13% in KZN. And obviously, and then you can see basically the balance of that, and majority of those being in Gauteng, especially the neighborhood centers, and also you also see a lot of also the minor regional centers and the major centers as well. So you can see the dominance. So you can also see by looking on the South African map on the right hand side and looking at the color, basically how they are scattered, and you can see the congestion, and basically in Gauteng, basically that green blob, that dark green blob, basically that they are all concentrated. And this is not surprising because we all know that Gauteng is actually a very small province, however, but very dense in terms of its population. At its population, I was actually looking at the township recently. I mean, just Soweto on its own at 1.2 million people, and going all the way down to all the various township, majority of which are in Gauteng. So those would then be what the shopping centers would look like. And then you've got office space, which is one of the areas that has been heavily impacted in terms of the COVID. So out of the 1.3 trillion, the 537 billion was retail, and the 357 has been an office space, the office space that we currently have in our country. And we can tell you in terms of the office space, once again, you can see that city of Joburg dominates in terms of the office space out of the metros that we currently have. And particularly when you talk office space, you really talk the different grades. You talk A, B, C grades. Majority of those has been A grades, have been really being concentrated once again in Gauteng, but more specifically in Joburg. And you have a lot also in Tshwane. You have quite a lot in Cape Town, eThekwini a little bit, and a very limited amount also in Nelson Mandela Bay. And obviously, and now as we see COVID hits, what has people done? The people now, obviously, there has been being a hectic renewal in terms of leases up until recently with the stage 6 of Eskom, where people are now reviewing their thoughts about renewing spaces and leases, and people have gone back. I've had the feedback from some of our people that says people are coming back and saying, you know, that lease that we canceled, is it still available? Can we take it back? Maybe not at the same size, and maybe not at the same price. So people are reviewing and are rethinking, and this has allowed a new engagement at different levels and new communications between the tenants and the landlords in relation to the spaces where they are. And why are people going back to now rethinking obviously the leases that they were aiming to cancel or they had canceled? It's only because if Eskom is actually going, if the stage 6 that we've recently been seeing, and even the higher stages like stage 7, 8, 9, if they are going to be the norm, certainly there's going to be very little productivity. So majority of the people have done a lot of assessment, or employers have done a lot of an assessment and have said, we are unable to actually set up everybody at home. So hence we've got to actually create a flexibility and assessment of more people coming into the office under the circumstances that we find ourselves in terms of Eskom. So that is our office space at the size. We also have an industrial asset class, which is part of the commercial at 281. This is one in area that is starting to grow. It's actually become really the very growing asset class compared to the other two, retail and office space. So you find that majority, particularly with where we are going, and even COVID has driven that to actually a major part where people are starting to really be doing online shopping, and e-commerce is starting to pick up a lot. You find that industrial, which is warehouses, is starting to grow much bigger than anticipated. A lot of people, we've seen a 60%, almost close to about 64% growth of people that have never done online transaction that started to do online during COVID, and those have continued. And all of you would know basically how the likes of the 60/60 Shoprite Checkers have actually grown significantly, and they've actually delivered quite a brilliant job. They've actually, they deliver sooner, that they deliver quicker than you can actually do your own shopping in Shoprite Checkers, not to mention the fact that you save money because you're not going to do that spontaneous shopping as you walk in between the lines. You write your list, and within an hour, literally, they are at your door and delivering. So industrial has been actually a growing asset class and will continue to do so. So you will see a lot more of the retail becoming, shopping centers becoming more experiential places where you go to literally go eat lunch in the midst of other people rather than to shop. Shopping will continue and will pick up, will aggressively and accelerate and pick up online. I mean, really, we actually have been in an environment, I mean, even long before COVID, you could literally walk into a kiosk that literally takes 258 measurements of you in a Levi kiosk, and you can choose the size, the shape, the color of your Levi. Within 48 hours, that Levi will be on your bed and delivered on your bed, customized to the size, the shape, whatever you want. So you'll find that a lot of the retail shopping centers will more become experiential, as I mentioned, and a lot more will pick up on the industrial, mainly because where we are going in relation to the growth in the e-marketing, online, e-commerce, and all of that. The hotels at 79,000, 74,000. It's not really, I must say, it's one of the areas that sometimes you don't have a good feel about. And the reason is also because, and it's actually become even more fuzzier when it comes to also to Airbnb. The reason is actually, unless if you're registered with the Tourism Council, you are never counted in. But sometimes what happens is that when people are low on cash, they kind of revert to actually doing their houses, whatever, Airbnbs, or they do they supply part of the tourism, and as and when they are okay, then they pull it back, but it's about 74% of that. So basically, in a nutshell, what makes up that 1.3 trillion in the commercial space is retail at 334, office space at 357, industrial at 281, and then hospitality at 94, which is 74 plus the other 20 that you add onto the 74 to give you 94. That gives you basically a nutshell of what commercial is made up of. And of course, the REITs being at just over about just under about 300 billion. And they've actually reduced a lot of the REITs because of a lack of, and from the ownership perspective, it's still the same number, but ownership perspective, the REITs is a listed sector, majority of which now they reduced from, it came from about 450 billion to about just under 300. So majority of those REITs, you see that they've diversified, they've taken some of the property, they've invested in South Africa, but also diversified into other countries. There was a lot that was diversified into Eastern Europe, of course. Some of those obviously have burned their fingers either through the Brexit thing or either through the Ukraine and the Ukraine war that has taken over. But there are those that also have actually done wonderfully well, and mainly because some of the countries, the growth has favored them, economic growth has favored them, and therefore the yields has supported the growth of those industries. And of course, there's unlisted sector as well. Majority, the big part of the unlisted sector is that actually is owned also by PSC. PSC owns a lot of the unlisted sector, and also pension funds. And you also have corporate, which is owned used buildings, people that do buildings and they use it for their own purpose as their organization as well. So that is the commercial side. Now let's come into the residential side. So I've covered the 1.3 trillion of the commercial side. Now, looking at the residential side is 3.9 trillion. So 3.9 trillion is the size of the residential side. This is made up of the 6.1 million houses that are registered with the deeds office, and it's formal houses. And I stress the point that it's formal houses. The informal houses don't actually count into that. So within the formal houses, you can actually look at, and by looking at the size of the bubble and looking at how the houses are actually spread across all the different provinces, with Gauteng with the biggest part as well of the 6.1 million houses. You can see the 1.6 million houses are in Gauteng. You can see Western Cape followed there. KZN would be the next one. So those are the houses in terms of that, in terms of where you house, and those are the ones that are registered and specifically registered by the deeds house. But we also see, basically, we also look at those houses and we break them down by what we refer to as value bands. We've got super luxury, luxury, high value, mid value, low value, township, and the low value. And obviously all of that differ from time to time. Super luxury, of course, it grows, and all of these value band grow, and they're influenced by different things. And these are, the variables of residential also split into, and they're influenced by various things. Even during up until recently, when the interest rates started going up, there's been accelerated growth of residential, mainly because of the interest rate being low. And obviously we can see them, we're going to start seeing them temper down a little bit there, and including actually also going down. So we're going to see all of it there. But you can see at the bottom, when you also see the type of property, of which you've got about 66 estates, freehold are still quite a bit in South Africa, and then you've got sessional title at another 600 as well there. And residential, when you talk residential, and I've really covered when I said the 3.9 trillion and 6.1 million houses, it was only informal, because we are able to calculate what formal houses and put a value on a formal house. But what we couldn't put a value on, but we still needed to actually understand the volume of these residentials, it's the informal industry. So South Africa's got a lot of informal industry, and those, it's actually, there's 543,000 of that, and you can see the breakdown. 21% once again is in Gauteng, and 19 in Mpumalanga, 18 in Northwest, and 12% in the Free State. So you still get an informal informal residents, and some of those have been also formalized, but formalized from a perspective that they are formalized. It's like deep slot. It's been formalized, and you can see the streets, you can see the electricity, but there's no individual Fs like Fs like you would in our houses that we would then live in. So we are able to count them, but we are not able to put a value because we haven't been clever enough to put a value of a tin house, what it means and how much it is. And these are what we refer to as informal, formalized residential houses. Beyond these ones, you still get informal ones. Informal ones are the ones you open your window one day, they're there. You come there, the following day, they are gone. You come there 3 weeks later, they are back. You know, they just come and go as and when, and you can never even put a finger in terms of who they are, how many they are, where they are. They come and go at any given point in time. Now that makes up the residential house. So out of that 5.8 trillion, I've covered really the commercial at 1.3 trillion and the background of the commercial. And I've covered the residential at 3.9 trillion, the 6.1 million houses that we have at 3.9 trillion of the property sector. Now, in the public sector is made up of 3 components. And those 3 components are state-owned enterprises and the municipal enterprises, and then it's also, once again, DPW, which we will cover. Now, I mentioned earlier on that DPE was part of the Property Sector Charter Council, mainly because a big part of the state-owned enterprises have got a lot of property, and therefore they are part of these entities. Out of those 19, particularly PRASA, Transnet, Eskom, and EXA account for 76% of that 66 billion out of the state-owned enterprises. So those are the biggest one. So you can see there's a total of 19, and there are 66 billion rand, as I said, Transnet being the big one, and they're currently in a huge drive of actually being able to release the liquid. They're trying to actually sell a lot of their properties that are not strategic to them, and in order to release a lot of liquid in order to do other things. EXA is also very big. Process, another one that has suffered tremendously, particularly during COVID. I had a huge engagement with also the people that run the PRASA properties. I mean, during COVID, I mean, they were saying people borrowed themselves the roof and the windows. I don't know whether they're going to bring it back at some point, but you know what? So a lot of those buildings were left really dilapidated. The result of it is that you don't have stations, you don't have train stations in many part of those areas. And then of course Eskom, as you know, also has got a very big part of it. And then you've got all the others which are part of the 19 that you have and the state-owned enterprise. So that's the first part in the public sector. The second part in the public sector is in itself is the metros. You would know that in the metros, there's about 268 metros in South Africa. However, we did not even take all of the metros and the cities. Some of them, by the way, they don't even know what they have. So it's no use taking them anyway. So the big metros that we have that we know, and there's actually obviously, there's a total of about 8 metros that we currently have. The 3 that are in Gauteng, Tshwane, Joburg, and Ekurhuleni. You then have Mangaung, eThekwini, Buffalo City, Nelson Mandela, and Cape Town. Those are the metros, the 8 metros that we have. But we added over and above those metros, we added about another 10 of those cities like Rustenburg, Mahikeng, Kimberley, Polokwane, Mbombela, Richards Bay, Pietermaritzburg, Mthatha, George, Stellenbosch, in order for those, and they've got a clear articulation in terms of the properties that they currently have. The size of those municipalities, metros and local municipalities is worth about 69 billion of that. And obviously you can see basically out of that, the metros are obviously still much bigger. Out of that 69 billion made up of 56 billion, and then the 13 billion belonging to the local municipalities of the big cities that we currently have. So that makes up the second portion of the public sector. The last portion of the public sector is DPW, which is Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, as we refer to it now. And at the time when we did our study, it was worth 102 billion rand, and there was 10 billion rand in the pipeline. We can tell basically out of how many are residential, how many are office spaces. We know they give about 2,500 leases. They are worth close to about 4 billion rand and annually. So it's a lot of leases that they currently doing. This was when we did our study, it was for the first time when Public Works could clearly articulate their asset register. As to how they've kept to date with it, it's another discussion for another day. But you could see actually from the provinces, Gauteng remains the biggest in terms of the province at 27%, followed by KZN, Western Cape at extension, well, Mpumalanga, and then Western Cape 16% at 14 and 10, and so on and so on. But in terms of the value, Gauteng at 26% of the distribution in terms of size, value-wise, Gauteng remains also the biggest as well, once again from the public side. So with those three components that make up the public sector, they make up, and you add the 66, 69, and 102 adds up to 237 billion. And last but not least is actually zoned land. Zoned land is actually a very small component of the land that we have in South Africa, and it's zoned either for commercial development or residential development. It's only 1.1% of the land that we currently have. The other parts of the land, there's lots of agriculture, nature reserves, and so on. But that 1.1% is worth 250 billion rand. So it's actually quite a sizable amount. And it actually keeps on shifting. The more you actually move from agriculture, there's development comes in, the more they release some from forestry to become an urban land for either development, residential or commercial, whichever one it's. So in a nutshell, so the point is when you look at all of those components, I mentioned commercial at 1.3 trillion, residential at 3.9 trillion, and then 237 billion at the public, and zoned land at 250 billion. That gives you basically 5.8 trillion of what the property sector is actually worth in our country. But not only were we interested in understanding what was the size of our country when we actually did the study, we also we were also interested, and we looked at basically that 5.8 trillion. What does it mean in relative to its total fixed capital stock of South Africa? And on the same year, obviously, where the Reserve Bank released the number, so South Africa capital stock is worth 7.6 trillion. So it means basically 5.8 trillion, and if you divide 5.8 trillion divided with a denominator of 7.6 trillion, it means property stock is 76% of what South Africa capital stock is worth. South Africa's asset is worth, outside machinery and transport. So property sector is literally quite a big and important sector in our industry. So it's 76% of the total structure. We then further looked at, from the size, we looked at the life cycle of a property sector, from origination to management to disposal, and we wanted to understand basically how it actually interacts. We further went in and we did that for the previous study when the property sector was 4.9 trillion, and did it again when it was 5.8 trillion. And what we really wanted to understand was what was the expenditure of the property sector, and we broke it down into residential, commercial, and end of cycle, because really the life cycle of a property has got an end of cycle, which sometimes does not fit into commercial or residential. It's just end of cycle, you know. So, and we could tell you basically 132 or rather 133 billion is what the expenditure was. To the GDP is literally 135, and depending what you actually look at as our GDP, we contribute 5 to 6% of our South African GDP. We give to the fiscus 62 billion rand, and that 62 billion rand, majority of which comes obviously from the commercial sector at 38 billion, and the balance of the 23 billion would be residential. But in terms of employment at the time and prior to COVID, and one would be interested to look at basically what COVID has done. We started the study, but it's not the kind of numbers we can talk about because we know what COVID has done to all of our lives. So it was 278,000 jobs that the industry then created. 148 of those were created created by residential property sector, 116 were created by the commercial sector. So that really in a nutshell gives you a proper an indication. And now, as I said, where are we going in terms of the research? Not only do we want to be able to understand retrospectively in terms of where the sector is, we're looking now at doing the study by looking at what are the variables that stimulate the property sector. When you talk about variables that stimulate the property sector, is it economic growth? Is it political stability? Is it business confidence? And so on. Is it inflation? Is it rates and tax, which has become a big one for the commercial sector, by the way, and things such as civil unrest, political stability. What does that mean to the growth? And we're looking at those variables, and those variables are now going to be variables that gets thrown into the econometrics, and they will be put by weighting. And as and when Statistics SA gives us the growth, the confidence, and estimated growth and confidence where we're going, we then will be able to estimate basically where the property sector will be growing, and we'll further be able to say, well, this is what we can give to our economy, this is our contribution to our GDP, this will be our contribution to jobs, because we can clearly articulate those numbers. So we're working at that very strict econometrics that we are currently working on. So but Majola, I hope in a nutshell, I don't know if it was in a nutshell, but I hope I was able to articulate basically and give a very a good understanding in terms of our sector, where we are in terms of our sector, where we're going, and really research for us. The funny part about research, and I'm glad I have academics around that are in the platform, because we all know with research, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. So it never stops. It just carries on and on. You realize, oh, I know this. Oh, but from this, I think I need to know more about that. So with the research, there is just never an end. As I said, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know, and you keep on carrying on and on and on. And so it will never be, obviously, you'll never see an end to it. And as we go along, I was very clear when we started this research and when we did it, that yes, we will never have a Rolls Royce on day one, but we'll start with a beaten up Beetle and slowly be able to add the parts of a Rolls Royce, and eventually we'll be able to actually clearly be able to articulate. We're not completely there, but at least from a consistency, we are all able to say the same numbers in the same manner, and the consistency is there, and at least there's a common understanding, and we're creating a hub of knowledge. And this also helps, and we're creating all of this knowledge, and added to this are a number of initiatives that we are doing. I mean, one of those that we are also proudly doing, we're doing a glossary of terms from the property sector, and that also contributes towards a consistent understanding. So when we say glossary of terms, is that when we talk about affordable housing in South Africa, what are we referring to? What size of a housing? When you talk about social housing, when you talk about, a lot of us refer to RDP housing, or we talk about, so all of these terms, so we're creating a glossary of terms in the property sector that creates an understanding. But also what we are working on is also a South African portal, and as you know, with all of this information that you get everywhere else, I think together with CSIR, the guys were saying, guys, you are in the space, you've got everybody, can you create a hub of knowledge? Because as you know, as you go into the website, with that, a lot of information that we currently have, it's very difficult sometimes to navigate and find what you want. So we're going to create a South African portal, property portal, where at least at the very, when you get into that portal, we'll have as much as possible about the property sector, whether it be research papers, whether it be engagement, whether it be conferences, whether it be whatever it is, but be able to pull as much information so that at least as and when this information grows, it's pulled together in one space. And when we are in our South African environment, you will then be able to know exactly where to go in order to bring that information. So thank you, Prof. Majola, for the opportunity, and thank you, members, for really being able to engage me and indulge me in being able to share what we consider our very important aspect aspect of our role in legislating, in driving transformation, but more importantly, in the research. We are no more talking and having emotional discussions about transformation, but we're having factual discussion about that because of the research that we currently have actually gone to an extent of actually being able to do. Thank you, Prof. Majola.
Wow, thank you. Thanks very much, my sister. Definitely, it's so mouthful. It's so much. Thank you so much. You've really empowered us a lot tonight. And that's a wonderful or great things about coming to these sessions, because you learn every day. There's so many things I didn't know tonight that you've really illuminated me around this sector. But I don't want to be jealous and take a lot of time. I can see hands already. My professor there, Professor Zide, can you just close your view there, sis?
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
okay.
Prof. I can hear
okay. No, thank you very much. Sis Portia, what a mouthful. What a mouthful. I think you really deserve a big round of applause, because you have, as Prof. Majola has mentioned, we have really learned a lot from you. You really deserve that. I've got one question, but it's divided into three. Without taking much time, I will put it together. Number one, I understand that you guys in the property sector, but is there a relationship between the South African property sector and the Department of Housing and Settlement? I think for me, that is very crucial, because I'm looking at what you referred to as the informal settlement. And it pains my heart whenever I drive through Gauteng and even in other provinces, when I'm looking at most of our people, by people, I mean African Black in particular, living in shacks. I mean, now August is going to be a very cold month, and you just think of babies and mothers and all of that. So I want to know whether in terms of land redistribution, do you guys have any influence to government to try and expedite that process? That's one. Maybe let me skip the second question and ask the very last one. I mean, I've seen very interesting figures about 2 billion and trillion, et cetera, But then my question is, with such money flying around and your contribution to the South African economy, why is it that we still have an unequal society? Yeah, maybe let me just pause there so that I don't take much time of the other colleagues who may want to have questions. Thank you very much, Portia.
Thank you, Prof. Do you want us to take a couple so that I can answer to save time?
You can go ahead for now, Sis Portia.
Okay.
Then we take another round. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Prof. Zuda, thank you for those questions. Yes, we do have a very strong relationship as well between the property sector and housing, and really residential is part of what we refer as Department of Human Settlement. So people like PPRA, which is a State Agency Affairs Board, and CSOS, and all of those, NHFC, they are part of the Department of Human Settlement. So there is a relationship indeed. And of course, so we have to work together. So you've got commercial side, but you've got a residential side. And yeah, I must say, you know, property is made up of all of those two segments, and there has been a dire need of housing, and we need to do that. And it actually also comes with a little bit of history as well. When we couldn't own houses, we eventually owned houses, but also it's got a lot to do also with simple things as migration and migration, where people now coming to Gauteng, even when, and by the way, even when you give them an RDP, then they rent it and they still go buy, put up another tent house. And by the way, they keep on saying, no, this is not my home. This is my house. My home is Ekaya, you know, way back then. But it's been very encouraging, Prof. I must tell you, one of the most encouraging things, which is actually an interesting story to actually relate to, and I'm sure some of you can actually relate to it. I mean, have you seen in the rural areas the kind of developments that we see? I mean, have you seen those houses? Beautiful, almost to an extent that they match beyond even the houses that you actually see in the likes of Sandton, and mainly because maybe they don't even, they don't have the limitation and the restrictions of spaces, right? Because they are able to go as broad, as wide as they wish, unlike here where you've got all of these limitations that, yes, the bylaws and the limitations that you wish. But in particularly, why has that been the case? A big part of it has been the likes of, and this is where you've seen the platforms where when you challenge, you know, when you challenge the norms of what currently exists, the extent to which you can grow. People like Capitec and African Bank, you know, the traditional 4 banks that you know that we currently have never wanted to fund any property that did not have an ERF. You know, if you don't have an ERF, no, sorry, we can't help you. But what has people like Capitec and African Bank done? They've been able to fund those people. So hence you see these big houses that are able to develop emakaya. So because they are being now funded by people that have taken and have turned this, have done this conventional and have created a non-conventional thought about it. But not only have they done it in houses. I mean, I was actually, Bank Smet the other day somebody told me, do you know that Capitec actually, they actually have got a huge capital book than all 4 banks together of cars. So of cars, they actually, their loan book on the cars, or their funding book on cars, is bigger than the 4 banks put together. Why? Because the 4 banks could only fund you on nothing older than 5 years, right? But the Capitec have gone and said, you know, your own Corolla from 19 Banbani, they will still fund you on it. Now their book has actually grown bigger than those banks put together. So the extent, so all of these things just, you know, and that's the hope sometimes that we see, that these platforms of disruption has given us an opportunity and a chance to be able to compete, when in a few years ago, we could not even imagine to compete at those levels. Now you are able to take the banks on, but similarly from a residential estate agency, I mean, their biggest success was based on footprint and their systems. Footprint doesn't matter anymore. You can actually have, you can cover the full footprint at the palm of your hand. You don't even need to be anywhere. Currently, as a matter of fact, the fact that you've got offices all over the country is a disadvantage, because now you've got huge expenses to worry about, you know. Systems are everywhere. Now, the platforms of disruptions have given an opportunity to be able to say, you know, with the systems, there's a lot of systems that you can utilize. So the likes of Pem Goldings, CF Properties, what gave them the urge is no more necessarily what actually they would take to become what makes them their property leader. But the question still remains, why are we not seeing a lot more of property leaders that are coming in with franchise? I mean, normally we would go around and sometimes ring fence support funding for previously disadvantaged women to get into the space. I mean, I remember one conversation that we had at NUFs, and somebody says, oh yeah, of course we can give you a lot of funding. People can buy franchise on Pem Golding. And I said, okay, hold on. Did you just say, why in a country where 90% or 92% is Black, why would we want to be growing the franchise of those people? Why can't we have Mofokeng properties or Shabalala properties in a country where literally, no, we don't want to, because at the end of the day, when you buy a franchise that is PEMCO, no matter how successful it is, and by the way, they started somewhere, and so should we. But the sad part as well, Prof. Zwide, it's an issue that, I mean, look at the growth of the townships that we have. I mean, and whoever will ever get into the second economy, trust me, they will be untouchable. And I mean, literally untouchable, because in the second economy, but look at it, you've got Diepkloof Extension, you've got Leon Dale, you've got Spruit View, you've got Soshanguve, you've got Mabopane. The list goes on and on and on. So those developments now, they are no longer where the history was, where where our parents were paying rent, you know, rent yaga government, yaga maspale, and they were paying and we couldn't own, right? Now it's all these bonded houses, whether you go to, literally there's bonded houses everywhere. The question is, we own it. Black people are 92% of the country. Well, and Africans in particular are 79% of this country. Now, shouldn't we have developers that are getting into that space so that that funding, those bonded houses are now starting to get into it's starting to be Black people, because it's your friend, it's your uncle, it's your aunt, it's your cousin, it's all our cousins that are now enhancing the economy. So the issue is, what are we doing? We must do more to then says, let's get into this space. I mean, look, I mean, it's got the challenges. We can talk forever. There's a lot of challenges, and I think I won't even finish if I were to begin to and start to actually articulate. But the issue is that opportunities are there, and it's something we mustn't give up. But trust me, whoever will get into the space of the second, what we refer to as second economy, will never be touchable at all. He will or she will remain untouchable. None of those put together, they will actually do a Capitec on what Capitec has done to the traditional bank. And oh, sorry, that was the first one. I forgot the second one. What did you say about the second one? Sorry, my good sir. Okay, so the monies, you were talking about the monies. There's so much monies, but there's still an equal society. An equal society is a much broader discussion. Housing is a small component of it. It goes as far, as wide, as broad as anything that you can imagine. I'm just hoping, obviously, houses, it has its own role to play. The more we can actually empower people with actually being able to give them houses. Sometimes is, how do you give them houses? Sometimes, you know, there's still houses that don't have title deeds. The title deeds that we know, they're still the rented houses, but also it has its own challenges. When you give title deeds and it's like, oh yeah, title deed, so who actually takes the title deeds? Is it auntie or malume or banbani, you know? And but also the way the structure of our houses, the way we've actually structured the entitlement of property, it's not necessarily empowering, because I mean, you can imagine a lot of people don't own houses because just even paying conveyance fees to own the house, it's expensive for people to do. So what do? They leave it. Doesn't matter, because I don't even have money to transfer it into my name. So I don't own it, because so even just the way South Africa in its own from a long time ago, the way it does this thing. So that's why there's been tribal land and tribal, you know, the tribal issues where people, you'll have your piece of land, but really the proper formal tenure of houses is not easy for people that have not necessarily been fully empowered. But where they are fully empowered, it then means you've got a house, then you become bankable, and then you can raise, you've got capital, you've got balance sheet, and then you can become bankable, you can raise a loan against the house, and so on and so on. So it's a start, but there's still a lot more to do. And a lot of it has a lot to do with how we review and view in terms of how property is being viewed. But at the same time, we also see a lot of politicians sometimes during a lot of our voting season, they give a lot of title deeds. And then at the end of the voting season, they all stop, you know, and then when it comes again, they are all issued, and then there's a lot of pictures and cutting ribbons and things like that. But it should actually be a continuous thing, and those title deeds should actually have been fully distributed to those who own them, and as those that are being able to acquire and have them fully and own them. So, but look, it's the challenges remains. There's not one, there's not two. I'm not making excuses. We cannot begin to do too many things as well. I think sometimes it's a matter of choose the few battles and the ones that you also seem that are in your space that you can do and still remain impactful in order to do. The others will remain just a continuous challenge that we can't give up on, that we need to continue to actually consider.
Okay, thank you very much, Portia. Yeah, satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Zita, and thanks, my sister. I see a hand there from my brother, Sam Tsima. Prof. Twala, I know that you're in the, you wanted to engage the speaker before we started. Obviously, that would have been the private matter, but I know you're in the built environment. I don't know if you want to ask any question. I see also there is Dr. Lipatsi, who is in that environment as well. But let's take Sam Tsima for now. Over to you, my brother.
Thank you, Prof. And greetings, Sis Portia. Wow. Sure. Let me commend you before I ask my question. One can sense the passion with which you are tackling the topic. I think one comment I want to make is that you've done a great job by taking away the emotions from this important topic of transformation by sharing such important data information. And I believe that knowledge is empowerment. And if we are to move forward with transformation, we need to bring data like this so that we ourselves who are perceiving ourselves to be the beneficiaries of transformation can also engage with this data and know the value of the sector. I think this is empowering indeed. I just wanted you to comment on the state of affairs in the areas that are known as emerging economic nodes in South Africa, which most of them happen to be in rural areas where land is owned by tribal authorities, and what they do in terms of giving away the land, which traditionally is owned by tribal authorities trusts. I'm talking of places like the Beckersford of this world, the Mukobanis. I think Rustenburg is a bit more, already more urban. But if you go to those emerging economic nodes, which are really where Black people actually should be capacitated. But the challenge is that these investors that go into those regions understand very well that the power lies with the owners of the land on behalf of the authorities being the king. And you mentioned the structures that we see emerging there. Those are structures built in the piece of land that is given to you as a citizen by your king. But the moment you are asking for a commercial land to develop, it becomes a dynamic. So I hope your research goes as far as that. Thank you very much. That's my question, Prof.
Thanks, Brother Sam. Let's take Prof. Twala, Sis Portia. Prof, over to you.
Actually, thanks, Prof. Thanks, my sister. I think in terms of position, it's quite fascinating. So, but maybe I think you have not done, maybe in the future you're going to come back through the professor. So I think to me, I see the cake, this actual big cake. So, but I'm not sure if you're going to have the information. It's actually around the issue. If you can look in terms of the distribution to say how far is the Peka cake in terms of distribution? So actually in terms of the particular, I mean, if you are looking since 1994 up to now, so in terms of the distribution pattern that is there, or we're seeing the cake growing and we're seeing the same people who were really eating that Peka cake. So it means that maybe they're eating more than before. So I'm just saying, to me, it's around that particular area. I think in terms of the last speaker, so in terms of the area, actually so under the chief. So I think that was my second question. I think I'm covered in terms of that particular question. Yeah. Thanks, Professor.
Thank you. Thanks, my professor there. Assist Portia, I'm sure you can take those two colleagues. Portia, can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you can. Yes, yeah, okay, thanks. Can you hear me well? Because you were just breaking that, but can you hear me? Okay, super. Okay. So I was actually, Babtsima, and really, and you're right, from a perspective of what is the state of our affairs. As I said, and unfortunately, I mean, we do need to get to, so I think obviously when we started this conversation, or when we wanted to actually also allocate value into this property industry, and we started with what we could be able to get into and be able to put value into it. So, but tribal land is very big. It's absolutely very big, but it's not something that we actually have been been able to put value into it, because it's not calculated the same way as we calculate, but it's a very big one. So there has been indeed emerging economic nodes, and you would know, I mean, one of the biggest one, Ingwenyama Trust. But as well, you would know that even it sounds like even our own government doesn't want to make a call in terms of whether tribal lands belong and so on. Look, I mean, and we operate, and we're not necessarily always trying to be safe, but then again, also we don't want to be throwing numbers that don't necessarily mean much in that space. So yes, there has been growth in the tribal land. So one of the elements that we actually put in our legislation was an element, we called it economic development. So economic development, Datasima, was about driving development in under-resourced areas as well. And why was that the case? And so we actually went to the developers and say, you cannot continue just to go develop Sandton every day and develop Cape Town every day. We've got to develop underdeveloped and unresourced areas. And why was that the case? It's because, I mean, in our country till today, there are people that still travel 4 hours just to go withdraw 50 rand. And out of that 50 rand, they will spend 25 rand on the transport. And en route towards that ATM, they will be praying that the ATM works. And this is the same country that you and I still live in. We are fortunate that you walk out of our own house, you've got options and choices of basically which ATM you go to. I mean, the worst one that I've heard was somebody says we bury our loved ones 5 weeks. And I said, 5 weeks, why is that the case? It says because our home affairs opens on a Thursday. You go one Thursday, there's no electricity. You go the next Thursday, there's no connectivity. You go the third Thursday, Portia has got a flu who needs to press a button to give you your certificate. You go the fourth Thursday, the fifth Thursday, you finally get your certificate to start the preparation for the fifth week in order to deliver. But that is the same country that you and I live in. So when we talk about doing development in under-resourced areas, is bringing those facilities closer to the people. I mean, and yes, I mean, and the debates become very robust when you have those debates. You go to the banks and say, can you have an ATM in this area? They says, no, there's not enough feet, or there's not enough transactions for us to put an ATM in this area. So, but the debate becomes, okay, there's not enough transactions, but but in Sandton, you've got more than enough transactions. You know what? Take the extra that you get in Hatfield and Hyde Park and whatever, and plow them in those places where you don't have enough feed. So that's why when we have our membership, we have trade partners and social partners. Trade partners will talk property in relation to rents and cents, and social partners will talk property in relation to social welfare. So it's not only about rents and cents, but it's about social welfare. So you bring a balance between the debate. So it's not only about money sometimes, it's all about, yeah, you make more than you need in Sandton. You make more than you require sometimes in Hatfield, in Pretoria. So you make more than you need in Bishop's Court in Cape Town. So take those and plow them where you're not even making enough money. Now, those are the debates that you need to have. But we also need to be able to say, do development in under-resourced areas, okay? So hence you then saw a lot of the development. You see a lot of shopping centers in townships, a lot of shopping centers in rural areas. But then again, it doesn't help the debate when in July 2020, then you have the social unrest that we saw last year, that, oh, all the shopping centers in the township, or majority of those, you know, so it's a little bit of that. But at the same time, there's also unintended consequences when you see such unintended consequences that result in cannibalization of township economy. But there's the issue that, do people now, if they've got Maponya Mall, do they still go buy bread in the corner shop there? So all of these things, look, there's always dynamics that continue, and they will continue to be there, and we need to engage, and there's no one answer to it all, but we need to continue and be looking at it. Once you've done something, you can't say, oh, I've done it now, let me relax, and so on. So it's all of the dynamics that you need to continuously be able to see. And coming to also to Prof. Twala's thing, Prof, I mean, look, in the terms of the distribution, look, it's moving to its own context. There's been a movement. The question is, what is the quality of those movements? But clearly, I can actually, I mean, one thing for sure that's absolutely clear, the pace of transformation has been very slow. And property is still in the hands of white people, white male people, and the majority of property is owned by the people. Yes, there's been some movement, but the question is it enough? Definitely, without a doubt, and I'm not even making an excuse. I know for sure, with no slight doubt in my mind, that it's not enough, and it will probably never be enough in a very long time and with a long shot. But the issue is that, yes, you are seeing things that are happening, but the thing is, it's also the quality of what is happening. A lot of the people that are starting in, that are becoming partners in this listed entity, are they seeing rents and cents? Sometimes not. Why? And there's a lot of variety of what are the issues. Sometimes you see people that come in, they say, oh, come and sign here, and then they sign and say, but hold on, before you sign, can we look at what you are seeing and what you're signing about? And sometimes people think, you know, you want to deny them the opportunity of these big numbers that sounds like billions and trillions. But once you are given an assumption, Prof, and sometimes somebody says, let's make, and provided, or the assumption is, if we grow by 4%, you will realize about 2 billion rand. The point is, we've never seen 4% in a long time. So that is a pipe dream. So those are the things that sometimes that we need to see. So in the process of doing these things, not only must we just only look at transaction and transacting, but also things such as master classes of helping our people to be able to understand what is it that they need to look into as and when they get into the space, and more look at quality transaction. For some people, by the way, they've been into this transaction and they're actually worse off than when they walked in. They walked out with a debt than when they walked in. So the support needs to be continuous, not only just from a funding and transactional perspective, but also from a support in terms of doing master classes that helps them to be able to understand what are the things that you need to look at for. What does interest rate mean when you actually take this? And you know, how when they structure this transaction, what does it do? And by the way, just as when you catch on it, there's a new smart pants that comes up with another formula. So you need to be continuous, and we need to be alive to the new methods in this process. Thank you, Prof.
Thanks, Ms. Portia. We will take Dr. Lipatsi, and then you will be the last one. You will respond to him, and in your response, we'll also ask your closing remarks there, Ms. Portia. We take Oh, Hlumelo, so those will be the last one, Dr. Lipati, and then Hlumelo. Very, very brief, please, colleagues, and then we'll give it to Sis Portia. Yes, Doc.
Okay, thank you very much, and greetings to everyone. That was a very great presentation. From my side, just to reinforce the conversation of transformation, one thing that I think we are lacking, most of us, it's towards the amendments of legislation. So in relation to experience around the property sector, specifically for sectional title holdings, the only thing that's really making other counterparts of ours consolidate power and for the sector to remain within their hands, there are just certain clauses within these sections and legislations which are still behind. So I feel like one angle at which we should approach this transformation is within this legislation and the acts that have been presented to us over time. So I think with that done, we will be able to move towards a more or less a level playing field, and that will really help us a lot. So which is also some of the direct interest that we should also look into individually and as researchers. So yeah, that's basically my comment.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Over to you, Hlumelo.
Right, thank you, Prof. Good evening, colleagues, and thank you, Sis Portia, for that detailed presentation. The property sector within the South African context, for me, must touch on South Africa's very contentious land question. Now, if you look at our country's land governance systems, the customary tenure system, for instance, with characterized by very weak property rights, and with the traditional leaders administering property affairs in the rural areas, and the freehold tenure system, characterized by very strong property rights in the form of lease agreements and title deeds. Now, what I want to know is what kind of role is the Charter Council playing in the policy formulation space to ensure that, for instance, the rural folk, the very poor rural folk, the women, the cooperatives and so on, are able to access land for commercial and non-commercial activities. I mean, if we are saying that only 11% of South Africa's land mass is actually arable for commercial farming, what are we doing with the rest of the land that can be put to use for commercial and non-commercial activities in the rural areas? And then again, looking at the urban and peri-urban setting with a very dense squatter camps. I mean, you in your presentation, you cited there in Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and the Northwest, averaging around 100,000 informal, formal houses. So those are very dense settlements. And what I want to know is whether you are playing a role in addressing the very skewed patterns of ownership in these urban centers, and also to ensure that entrepreneurs and others are able to access, for instance, land and buildings as a primary factor of production to conduct business activities and other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and Prof, thank you for those questions. And as I wrap up, maybe to answer Dr. Dapati and Vela's question, I think the issue of basically the sectional titles and the consolidation of power and the sections that are still behind. It's very true. There's still there's still a lot of areas with, I mean, I mentioned itself, even just the entitlement, the tenure itself, or even just the ownership patterns of saying, you know, you've got to pay for conveyances. People that don't have the money, they prefer, they'll continue not to have, you know, because they don't have money to actually even transfer that houses into their name. Of course, it's slowly changing, but it's very slow. The last change was that anything that's less than R1 million, you won't have to pay conveyancers fees and so on. So it's changing, but it's also very slow. So yes, indeed, I think those are the things that needs to be looked into in details. And it also touches what Bab Sitonga's question really on the issues of the system systems and the tenures and the rights. Yes, the land, and yes, you can sometimes separate property from land because the two are very intertwined. But at the same time, remember from our space where we're talking about it, there's a part of it that we cannot take and claim to be all ours, because we are now stepping also on our colleagues' feet, and it's not necessarily the same. But yes, that doesn't stop us from working together in order to achieve what we need to achieve. And really, so where we're talking about dense settlement, Maskwata camps, and how are we doing in order to access that land to actually for them to actually create commercial, at least opportunities for themselves. Because really, I mean, in a nutshell, when we talk about people crying for land, people are not just don't want land just for the sake of wanting land, or rather don't want land that they can't do anything with. What in a lot of times when people are talking about land, people are because they're crying for opportunities, land where they can create opportunity. It's not that we want land that you can't do anything, but it's more opportunities. But obviously they are aware that with the process of in the land, if they can actually opportunistically be able to create something out of the land, it actually would then empower them. It hasn't been easy. It's been a long rope, and as you would know, that not even our government has made a very clear, articulate decision about really what is the position. I mean, you talk about one willing buyer, willing seller, and expropriation, and I mean the debates carry on and on and on. So I mean, of course, from where we sit, obviously we can operate within the context of the environment of the law as it operates. Sometimes one wishes to actually be very rebellious and to be able to take certain things, but of course we are cognizant about what we are doing, how we're doing, and there's still a lot more to do, despite the fact that those that have not been resolved. So we still, as we wait for those to be progressively changed to get to empower us, we will touch on those that we can still do, that we can do something about, but there's a lot to do, and those are amongst others. As I said, the issue of land cannot be ignored. It's a big one, and it's a big one, it's a proper one, but as I said, even our own government hasn't made a very clear articulation in certain spaces about how exactly it's going to actually do expropriations and whatever the case may be, and the settlement. How do we actually, I mean, there's still a challenge. So we've taken the few that we can do, that we still have opportunity to do and work on it. In the process, we hope as we sort out others, the other spaces are opening, so that when we finish, and hopefully, and by the way, I don't even think there's a word like finish in the space. As we start others, some parts open up and more other people come in and work with us, support us in order to actually touch other spaces with the expertise that they have. So from that space, I think really it's something that we may do. And Prof. Majola, I think as we wrap up, I want to be able to say thank you for those questions. And from my side, obviously, as I said, with the Property Sector Charter Council, yes, we do the best that we can, but I have no doubt I can actually very clearly articulate to, as I said, the little we know is what we know, but definitely it's not everything. And I would really welcome the support and the assistance of people that even know more than we've been able to do and reach out. So the support is highly welcome from that from that side of people that are able to actually even guide us to be able to say, look at this and let's see to what extent we can actually do and how we can actually be able to do. I think the presentation, as I showed, I think the last slide had my name and my direct mobile number and my email address. So I would by all means welcome everybody to then engage. This is not a one-man job, and this is not a 10 people job. It needs all hands on deck, and we all need to put our hands on deck. And it's if we are all going to actually be able to really register any any form of success, we all need to be in it. And yes, and form of success doesn't mean sometimes we will enjoy the shade of the seed that we plant, or the tree that we plant. The shade may be enjoyed by the generations to come, but at least ours is to start. And giving up is, as much as there's lots of frustration, giving up shouldn't be an option. So with all of that, Prof, I would sincerely want to thank you for the opportunity, for the amazing contribution, amazing questions, and really the expertise that of the people that I hear, even just from the questions, really tells us there's still a lot to do, but we still also have got those expertise that to put together, and I'm sure they can start to move the needle bit by bit to hopefully to an extent that will actually hopefully make us proud. And we may not see the results, but we would have laid the foundation for the positive results to yield in the future. I thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Sis Portia. You've empowered us a lot tonight. There's so much we didn't know about property sector that we have learned so much. So we are so much illuminated and inspired. Thank you so much for, once more, as I said earlier on, for availing yourself. As you can see that colleagues, they might ask you to come back again. We'll engage with you because it's a very important sector. And then I can just see that there's so much you would like to engage on. And thank you so much. But you've really empowered us tonight. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. Those who've joined us for the first time, thank you so much. We meet every Wednesday, so please do join us next week, Wednesday again. In terms of the link, please don't call me or write to my office asking the link or the record. What you can just do the easy way, go to our YouTube channel, is Prof Mazwe Majola. And you'll find all the beauty there is that you'll find all other videos, even our past videos, everything is there. So it's a library there that you'll find. And please do subscribe so that you can get the notifications of new materials. We put all sorts of leadership materials there. So it's Prof Mazwe Majola YouTube channel. So this video will be posted there, so you'll find it there, and then you can play it. And then please do like and do subscribe so that we can grow as a channel. Other than that, thank you so much. Oh, by the way, you might have seen now that we are really going towards our conference and book launch. It's going to take place on the 25th and 26th August. That will be Thursday and Friday. Please do register and please do attend. You can't afford to miss that one. You just can't afford to miss it. Obviously, you just learn a lot. I mean, we've got powerful speakers from our book contributors who will be talking about women in leadership. We've got guest speakers, keynote speakers, and then obviously you must buy a book as well, so that you can get the copy of it. If you want, and not if you want, I do encourage, you may actually pre-order the book so that you get it by the time you go to the conference. You have read it, and then you will courier to you. You'll get a signed copy. By the time you get there, you can engage people on something you have seen already. Thank you so much. May God bless you. The session is adjourned now. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.